Welcome to the Ward Case Studies. This is episode 9, Jessie Misskelley Jr. In this episode, I will discuss Jessie's confession. On June 3, 1993, Detective Allen went to the Highland Trailer Park to locate 17-year-old Jessie Lloyd Misskelley Jr. Detectives wanted to interview Jessie because his name had been mentioned during the investigation as a person who knew Damien Eccles, and because he is the person who introduced Vicky Hutchinson to Damien. Vicky told investigators that Jessie belonged to a group of boys called the Dragons, along with Damien Eccles, Jason Baldwin, Robert Birch, Sean Webb, Snake, and Lucifer. Detectives would later testify at Jessie's trial that Jessie was not a suspect at that time, and that they regarded him as more of a witness. The timeline of events on June 3, 1993 would be the subject of many debates and become the backbone of Jessie's defense during his trial in 1994. Before we get to the confession, let's get to know Jessie Misskelley Jr. Jessie is 17 years old and lives in the Highland Trailer Park with his father, Jessie Misskelley Sr., and his father's girlfriend, Lee Rush. He's known to friends and family as Little Jessie. Jessie struggled in school and dropped out in 9th grade. Jessie is known for being quick-tempered and known to fight. On May 12, 1993, Tiffany Allen, age 13, and her mother, Gayla Allen, came into the Crittenden County Sheriff's Department to report an incident between Misskelley Jr. and Miss Allen. According to the officer's report, on May 11, 1993, at 4:45 p.m. in the park at Lakeshore Estates, Miss Allen was at the park when Misskelley began walking in her direction with several other students. When Jessie approached her, he struck her in the mouth. Tiffany stated that this incident was possibly stemming from a prior incident where Jessie had told several people that he had had sexual relations with Tiffany, and at that time she stated she confronted Jessie and told him that these allegations were untrue. Tiffany stated she ran from the park area and hid with a friend until her mother could be notified and the sheriff's department could send a deputy. The report continues. The victim gave a handwritten statement, and I obtained statements from witnesses that are attached to this report. The offense is listed as battery in the 3rd degree and is signed by John L. Murray. The following is from Detective Allen's notes conducted during the pre-polygraph interview, June 3, 1993 at 11 a.m. They read as follows. Knowledge of Damien Eccles, stated he was sick. Listed friends of Damien, Jason Baldwin, in parentheses, always together. Girlfriend of Damien, Dominique, in parentheses, last name unknown. Last saw Damien 3 weeks ago. Saw Damien at Highland at Vicky's house, 34-year-old woman, in parentheses, I told her he's sick. Heard about, in parentheses, rumors that Damien and Robert Birch did it. Stated he was working with Ricky Deese, in parentheses, roofing. Thinks he worked Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, week of murders. Jessie Misskelley stated he saw a boy on bike near 7th Street when he saw a police car. He ran and hid. Got off work at 5 p.m. Josh Darby / Ricky Deese. Got off work at 5 p.m. that Wednesday. Stated he went home. States he goes to skating rink a lot, sees Damien up there nearly every time he's up there, sees Damien with Carl Smith and Jason Baldwin. Has seen Jason Baldwin get in a fight with a guy and got his nose busted and Damien stuck his finger in the blood and licked it. Occurred at Lakeshore. States known Damien for about a year. States Damien met Vicky after murders. Vicky asked Misskelley about Damien. States he's never been to Robin Hood. These are Detective Ridge's notes from the same pre-polygraph interview. Day of murders. That week worked as roofer, boss, Ricky Deese. Worked with Josh Darby, got off work 5 p.m., went home and stayed home. Heard Damien and Robert Birch had done murders. Damien is sick, in parentheses, in head. Drinks blood. Damien and Jason are close, Jason Baldwin. Hasn't seen Damien in over 2 months. Doesn't know anything about murders. Doesn't know much about Robert Birch, lives somewhere in West Memphis, used to live in Highland Trailer Park. This is from Detective Durham's polygraph report. In the pre-test interview, the subject stated he has never participated in a satanic ritual and has never observed one. He denied being involved in the murders and does not know who killed the 3 boys. He also said he does not suspect anyone. Conclusion: deception indicated. This subject made no admissions to this examiner, but did give a statement of admission to Inspector Gitchell and Detective Ridge following this test. After the polygraph test was given and the results interpreted, Detective Durham tells Detective Ridge Jessie failed his polygraph. Detective Ridge then conducts a post-polygraph interview. Detective Ridge notes, Bill Durham reported that he is lying, in parentheses lying his ass off. Detective Ridge and Inspector Gitchell conduct this interview, although Ridge is the only one who takes notes. The following is from those notes. Stated he received a call from Jason Baldwin the night before the murders. They were going to go out and get some boys and hurt them. Stated he received call from Jason. Damien in background wanted him to go with them. Said they planned something. Heard Damien say that Jason ought to tell that they were going to get girls or something. Jessie said he knew what they were going to do. Jessie began to say something and then says he doesn't want anything to do with it. There's a star next to this note. Jessie stated he saw pictures of boys killed during meeting. Has meeting of, quote, satanic cult, end quote. We'll meet in different places. We'll talk of what they are going to do. We'll build fire of paper and wood and stuff. A friend of Jason's will bring a briefcase. 15-year-old Ken wears long coat. Briefcase has a couple of guns. Lives near where Billy Stewart used to live. Someone brings a dog and they usually kill the dogs. They will skin the dog and eat part of it. Says that Damien drives a red car owned by Jack Eccles. In the briefcase are a couple of guns and some drugs, marijuana and cocaine. States that the picture of the boys in a group of 3 in front of a house. Damien has been to West Memphis watching, has watched boys in the woods where they were killed. States Damien hangs out at skating rink to find boys. Doesn't know who has briefcase now. States Damien has been watching boys for a long time. Meetings all held on Wednesday. Wednesday that boys were killed, there was no meeting. Friends who attend meeting. Christina Jones, Jessie, Dennis Carter, Jason, Damien, Adam, Ken, new dude, Tiffany Allen, Domini, blonde hair, tall, heavy set. Will be 8 or 9 people and they will have orgy afterwards, 3-on-1. Jason and Damien are having sex together, has had meetings at Robin Hood. Jason has folding knife. Damien doesn't have one. Jason always carries a knife. Jessie not sure of times of phone calls. 3 calls, day before, morning of murder, after dark. Jason online, Damien in background. We did it. What are we going to do? What if someone saw us? Sounded like Jason was at home, brothers in background. Says that the animal killing is part of ritual. If person eats meat, then he is part of group. Will take polygraph concerning new statement. Show a picture of one victim in coroner's office. Jessie knew was one of those killed by Damien. Jessie looked hard at picture and said it was of quote-unquote more boy and that it was one of the boys in the Polaroid. Jessie stated that he didn't want to be a part of this, that Damien and Jason killed. He did not. Will think about taking a polygraph test. I left room, at which time Jessie informed, and there's a star, Gary Gitchell of his being present during time of murders. Witnessed murder by Damien and Jason. Taped statement began after time given to get self-composed. There are a couple of things I want to point out about these notes. First is the red car driven by Damien and owned by Jack Eccles. Vicki Hutchison made a similar statement, however, she didn't mention Jack being the owner, and she said it was a Ford Escort. There is no record of Jack owning a red car or allowing Damien to drive it, or any vehicle for that matter. Second is the briefcase. The West Memphis Police Department never located a briefcase in any of the searches of Jessie, Jason, or Damien's homes. Third is Damien watching the boys in the woods, quote, where they were killed, end quote. This has never made any sense to me. The trailer park where Damien lived had lots of kids. Why go all that way? Plus, in all of the interviews conducted with children and teenagers from the neighborhood, none of them ever saw Damien in the woods or in the neighborhood. The following is from the West Memphis Police Department time log of June 3, 1993, and the day's events as it pertains to Jessie Misskelley, Jr. 8:00 a.m. Squad meeting discussed attempting to pick up Jessie Misskelley Jr. in reference to his being a member of cult that Damien Eccles and Jason Baldwin are said to be members of. Check possibility of his being a witness to homicide or any statements he may have overheard from Damien or anyone concerning the homicide. 9:13 a.m. Detective Sergeant Mike Allen checked in service. Detective Allen went to the residence of Jessie Misskelley Jr. to attempt to make contact. Contacted the female who was at the residence, who informed that Jessie Jr. was not at the residence. She informed Allen that he could go to Jim's diesel repair and meet with Jessie Misskelley Sr. 9:45 a.m. Allen went to Jim's repair and met with Jessie Sr., who went and picked up Jessie Misskelley Jr. Jessie Misskelley Jr. then went with Detective Sergeant Allen to the West Memphis Police Department. 10 a.m. Detective Sergeant Allen filled out the subject description form, and the interview began with the questions of any knowledge he had of the homicides and his whereabouts on the day of the homicide. 11 a.m. Detective Allen read Jessie Misskelley Jr. his rights according to the Miranda rule, with Detective Ridge being a witness to the procedure. It was determined that it would be necessary for Jessie Misskelley Sr. to sign a consent to allow Jessie Jr. to submit to a polygraph examination. 11:15 a.m. Sergeant Allen went with Jessie Misskelley Jr. to find his father to obtain a consent to take a polygraph examination. Sergeant Allen had Jessie riding as an unsecured passenger in the front seat, at which time he met Jessie at or near Missouri Street and Shopping Way. Sergeant Allen met with Jessie Misskelley Sr. at Chief's Auto Parts, where he explained the upcoming procedure and obtained a written consent for Jessie Misskelley to take a polygraph exam. 11:30 a.m. Jessie Misskelley Jr. was read his rights according to the Miranda rule by Bill Durham prior to his administering a polygraph examination. 11:56 a.m. First chart was completed during polygraph examination. 12:03 p.m. Second chart completed during polygraph examination. 12:11 p.m. Third chart completed during polygraph examination. After the test, about 15 minutes were spent in the post-test interview. 12:30 p.m. Bill Durham advised Detective Ridge, Inspector Gitchell, and Sergeant Mike Allen that Jessie Misskelley was being deceptive in his responses to the relevant questions asked during the polygraph examination. 12:40 p.m. It was decided that Detective Ridge and Inspector Gitchell would continue the interview. 12:40 p.m. It was decided that Detective Ridge and Inspector Gitchell would continue the interview. 2:20 p.m. Jessie states to Inspector Gitchell that he was present when the three boys were killed. Preparations were begun to tape the rest of the interrogation when it was determined that Jessie was a direct witness or a participant of the homicide. 12:44 p.m. The taped confession began with Jessie Misskelley Jr. being questioned by Detective Ridge and Inspector Gitchell. 3:18 p.m. The taped confession was completed. Work was started in reference to obtain search warrants and arrest warrants for the persons named as participants in the homicide. 3:22 p.m. Jessie Jr. offered food, which he declined, and was given 2 cigarettes. 3:45 p.m., Inspector Gitchell conducted a second interview with Jessie Misskelley Jr. to clear up some discrepancies concerning time and events in the first interview. This is marked through and the word incorrect is written. 5:05 p.m., Jessie Jr. asked if he wanted any food to eat. 6:15 p.m., Jessie Jr. was fed. 6:30 p.m., Jessie Jr. was asked if he wanted to relieve himself. 9:06 p.m., Ridge, Gitchell, Fogelman present for a probable cause hearing with Judge P. Rainey presiding. 9:14 p.m., testimony was given concerning the probable cause for the search warrants and arrest warrants for those involved in the homicide. Let's move on to Jesse's confession. His full confession audio will be uploaded to the channel. In the interest of time, I'm just going to play clips.
Hey, Jesse, let's go straight to that date, 5/5/93. A Wednesday, early in the morning. You received a phone call, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
Who made that phone call?
Jason Baldwin.
All right. What occurred? What did he talk about?
He called me and asked me could I go to West Memphis with him, and I told him no, I had to work and stuff. And then he told me he had to go to West Memphis, so him and Damien went. Then I went with them.
All right. When?
Wednesday.
All right. When did you go with them?
That morning.
At 9 o'clock in the morning?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I went with them, and then
Now, were you in a car? Whose car were you on?
we walked.
Y'all walked? Okay.
Right, we walked, and then
Where did you go?
we went to Robin Hood.
You went to the Robin Hood. Explain to me where those woods are.
By Blue Beacon Turquoise.
It's a little patch of woods
Little patch of woods
behind Blue Beacon?
behind it. Right back there behind it.
Okay. What occurred while you were there?
When I was there, I saw Damien hit this one boy real bad, and then he started screwing him and stuff, and then
All right, you've got in front of you a picture that was taken out of the newspaper, I believe. It's got 3 boys, and these are the 3 boys that were killed on that date in Robin Hood Woods. Okay. Which one of those 3 boys is it you say Damien hit? The third picture, which will be...
This boy right here?
Yeah.
All right, that's the Byers boy.
Christopher.
That's who you're pointing at?
Mm-hmm.
If you'll read the caption, the grisly slaying from left, 8-year-old Michael Moore, Stephen Branch, and Christopher Byers. Okay. So, you saw Damien strike Chris Byers in the head. What did he hit?
The first issue is obviously the time. At 9 a.m. on Wednesday, May 5th, 1993, Jason, Chris, Michael, and Steve were all in school. Second, from Detective Ridge's notes, Jesse was shown a picture of one of the boys in the coroner's office. From the way the notes are written, it appears Jesse correctly identified the child he was shown as the Moore boy. However, in this clip, Jesse incorrectly identifies Michael Moore. He points to Chris's picture and identifies him as Michael. Here's the picture Jesse was shown. Note that the boys' names are in the description underneath the picture.
Saw Damien strike Chris Byers in the head. What did he hit him with?
He hit him with his fist and bruised him all up real bad. And then Jason turned around and hit Steve Branch.
Okay.
And started doing the same thing. Then the other one took off. Michael Moore took off running. So I chased him and grabbed him and held him till they got there, and then I left.
Okay. All right. When you get the boys back together, where are you at from the creek?
I was up by the service road.
Up by the service road? Okay. Now, when he hits the first boy, where are they at when he hits him? Are you in the woods, You on the side of the big bayou? You out in the field? Where you
I
at?
was in the woods.
In the woods. Okay, you've been down there in those woods before.
So
Can you describe to me what in those woods, what's the location where you were? Is there a path you go down?
I was down a little path.
All right, where does that path go to?
It lead out there close to the field, close to the interstate.
Okay.
Stuff where I was at.
All
I
right.
was close by the interstate.
When he hits the first boy, and then Jason hits another boy, and one takes off running, where does he run to?
That one, he runs out, going out the park, and I chased him and grabbed him and brought him back.
Which way does he go? I mean, does he going back towards where the houses are? Is he going to Blue Beacon? Is he going out towards the field? Where's he running to?
Towards the houses.
Towards the houses.
Where the pipe is that goes across the water?
Yeah.
Okay.
He ran out there, and I caught him and brought him back. And then I took off.
Okay. Well, you came back a little bit later, and all three boys are tied.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
And then I took off and went home.
All right. Have they got their clothes on when you saw them tied?
They had them off.
They had already gotten them off. When he first hit the boy, when Damien first hit the first boy, did they have their clothes on then?
Mm-hmm.
All right. When did they take their clothes off?
Right after they beat up all three of them and beat them up real bad.
Beat them up real bad. And then they took their clothes off.
And
Then they tied them.
then they tied them up, tied their hands up.
Jesse's describing Michael Moore running off and he brought him back. Once he's back, he says the boys are tied with their clothes off. Jesse's asked about whether their clothes were on or off when Damien hit the first boy. Jesse says they were on. Jesse is never asked to describe what the boys were wearing.
You saw somebody with a knife. Who had a knife?
Jason.
Jason had a knife. What did he cut with the knife? What did you see him cut, or who did you see him cut?
I saw him cut one of the little boys.
All right, where did he cut him at?
He was cutting him in the face.
Cutting him in the face. All right. Another boy was cut, I understand. Where was he cut at?
At the bottom.
On his bottom? Was he face down and he was cutting on him, or?
He was.
Now, you talking about bottom, do you mean right here?
Mm-hmm.
In his groin area? Okay. So
You know what his penis is?
Yeah. That's where he was cut at.
That's where he was cut.
Which boy was that?
That right there.
You're talking about the Byers boy again? Okay.
Are you sure that he was the one that was cut?
That's when I seen him cutting on.
Do you know what a penis is?
Yes.
Is that where he was cutting?
That's where I seen him going down at. And he was on his back. I seen him going down like that real close to his penis and stuff. And I saw some blood, and that's when I took off.
Were y'all close to the creek at that point?
Here, Jesse is describing who had a knife and what the knife was used for. He does say one boy was cut in the face, but he doesn't specifically say which boy. Then there's the weird exchange about whether or not Jesse knows what a penis is. Also note that every time Jesse gives a new detail, he says, "and then I took off," or "then I left." This could be, as Inspector Gitchell put it, trying to lessen his involvement, or it could be Jesse wasn't there, but in order to get the reward money, he's giving a false witness statement. Because frankly, you would think witnessing the murders of 3 children, the details would be permanently etched in your memory. Also, Inspector Gitchell testified at Jesse's trial that Jesse was the only person to correctly identify a child being cut in the face. He also takes this opportunity to throw a little shade at Prosecutor Fogelman.
Out of the 100 or more people that y'all talked to, are you aware of anybody other than the defendant who told you one of the victims that had their genitals removed, and one of them had cuts to the side of the face, and there'd been some grabbing of the ears?
There was no one else that mentioned those particular injuries, and you yourself, Mr. Fogelman, you're pointing to the wrong side of the cheek.
Oh.
All right. You went home. And about what time was it that all this was taking place?
They called me about,
I'm not saying when they called you. I'm saying what time was it that you were actually there in the park?
I was there about 12.
About noon? Okay. Was it after school? Had let out?
I didn't go to school.
What, these other boys?
No, they skipped school.
They skipped
They
school.
was going to catch their bus or stuff, and they was on their bikes. So
Alright. They were on their bikes. Where were their bikes at?
they laid their bikes down when they came out there when they hollered for them, told them come out there.
Where did they lay their bikes down? That's what I'm asking.
I don't know where they laid their bikes at down there, cause I was behind Damien and them, way behind them.
Okay.
And when they hollered, then I seen the boys.
The little boys came on over.
Mm-hmm.
Had Damien seen these boys before?
Yes.
Has he done things with them before? Or has he just been watching them? Has he had sex with them before? Has he ever had sex with any of them before?
No, he's been watching them.
He's been watching them. You mentioned earlier that at one of the meetings you went to with this cult thing, they had some pictures. Describe those pictures for me.
It had some houses, the trees and stuff.
Okay. Had somebody taken pictures of these boys?
Mm-hmm.
Were they in the houses or were they in these trees when they took those pictures?
They had houses.
At the houses. Did they take like one picture of one boy?
It was in a group.
Always three?
It was a group of pictures of three. All three of them.
All three of them would generally be together.
Mm-hmm.
How many pictures did you see altogether?
I just saw one.
Okay. And it had these same three boys in it?
Mm-hmm.
You're certain of that?
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you say the boys skipped school that day? These little boys did?
Mm-hmm.
Are you sure?
They was going to catch going somewhere, and like I said, Damien and them left before I did. I told them I'd meet them there and stuff. I had to get ready and stuff. I'd meet them there. And it was early in the morning, so they went ahead and met me up. They went ahead and went up there, and then I came up, later on behind them.
What time did you get there?
I got there about 9.
In the morning?
Mm-hmm.
Of Wednesday morning?
Mm-hmm.
And
What time is it right now?
Right now?
Yeah. You don't know what time it is?
do you not wear a watch?
It's at home.
So
My dad woke me up this morning.
your time period might not be exactly right what you're saying.
Right.
But it was like early in the day, but you don't know exactly what time. Okay. Because I've got some real confusion with the times you're telling me. But now, this 9 o'clock in the evening call that you've got.
Okay, now we're back to the time issue again. The detectives know that noon is wrong because everyone but Jessie and Damien were in school. Also, Jessie was shown pictures of the boys at the cult meetings, but cannot describe the pictures with any details. They continue to try to pin the time down further. Detective Ridge asks Jessie if he knows what time it is now. Jessie isn't wearing a watch and there's no clock in the interrogation room, so of course he doesn't know what time it is now.
How long was the knife that Jason was using? All right, you're describing a knife that would be about 6 inches long. Is that right? Mm-hmm. And what kind of blade did it have on it?
Like just a regular knife blade.
Was it a knife that you fold up, or was it like a hunting knife that's just one piece?
Just you fold up knife.
It was a folding knife?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Does Damien have a knife?
No.
He doesn't have one? He didn't have one that
He
night?
didn't have one that day.
Did he borrow yours?
No, he bought mine.
Okay.
Jessie is now describing the knife that was used. Note, he describes the blade as a regular knife blade. Detective Ridge and Inspector Gitchell know this detail is wrong. Going back to the undated case summary, the knife used had a serrated edge. Also, the knife presented at the Eccles-Baldwin trial commonly referred to as the lake knife, had a serrated edge. It was found in the lake behind Jason Baldwin's trailer. Jessie also says it was a fold-up knife despite Ridge interjecting with just one piece. The lake knife didn't fold.
Where did the boys put their bikes?
Close right there before you come in. They laid it down right there.
Okay.
And I don't know what, after I left, I don't know what they did with the bike.
You didn't do anything to the bikes at all?
No,
Are you sure?
positive.
You didn't touch the bikes?
Didn't touch it.
This detail about the bikes could be interpreted as a detail Jessie got correct, although to be sure, I wish the detectives had asked follow-up questions. What Jessie is saying could be interpreted as before the pipe bridge or after the pipe bridge, but before the ditch.
Say, hey, and the boys came out there.
Did they call them by name?
They just hollered and then they just showed up.
Where did the boys put their bikes?
Close right there before you come in. They laid it down right there.
Okay.
And I don't know what, after I left, I don't know what they did with the bike.
You didn't do anything to the bikes at all?
No,
Are you sure?
positive.
You didn't touch the bikes?
Didn't touch it.
Right. You've been back to this place since that murder,
Mm-hmm.
since it took place. What did you do while you were there? Now be truthful.
I sit down there. I just sit there after what they did to the boys. I just sit there
And did what?
and just thought what happened to them real bad. I just thought,
Okay.
and then I left and stuff.
And stuff.
I just left and walked on.
When did you go back there?
2 or 3 days after it happened, and I left.
Were you there by yourself?
I was there by myself.
Did you go there with some more boys once?
Just me, David, and
To
Dennis.
that particular place.
No, not to that.
Are you willing to go down there with us and us have a camcorder and you show us where these things took place? Could you do that? Wouldn't have any problem with that.
I was not with it.
Now, this is an interesting detail. However, there's no follow-up questions. Who is David? Also, Jessie says he was out there 2 or 3 days after the murders. Looking through the case file, it's difficult to determine when the crime scene was released. However, there was luminol sprayed in the area where the boys' bodies were found on May 12, 1993. One would think it would be necessary to keep that area free from human contamination. Obviously, the West Memphis Police Department has no control over the animals in those woods. The bottom line is, I can neither confirm or dismiss this detail. However, if this detail is to be believed, it appears Jessie did this as an act of remorse.
I went in there and thought about it, and I ain't been there since.
Okay. Let me ask you something. This is real serious, and I want you to be real truthful. And I want you to think about it before you answer it. Don't just say yes or no real quick. I want you to think about it. Did you actually hit any of these boys?
No,
Now tell us the truth.
no,
Okay. Did you actually rape any of these boys?
no,
Did you actually kill any of these boys?
no,
Did you see any of the boys actually killed?
yes,
Okay. Which one did you see killed?
that right there.
You're pointing to the Byers boy again? Okay.
And how was he actually killed?
He choked them real bad, like,
Choking him. Okay. What was he choking him with?
it's like a little, like a stick. It was a little stick, and kind of holding it over his neck.
Okay. So he was choking him to the point where he actually went unconscious? So at that point, you feel like he was dead?
Yeah.
Okay. Did any of the other two boys, were you there when they were actually killed?
Mm-hmm.
You say you got sick. So
Jessie has identified Chris Byers as the boy he witnessed being killed. However, Jessie also gets this detail incorrect. According to the autopsy report, examination of the soft tissues of the neck, including strap muscles, thyroid gland, and large vessels, revealed no abnormalities. The hyoid bone and larynx were intact and showed no evidence of fracture or hemorrhage. It's noted in the pathologic diagnosis, abrasions of front of neck with no evidence of neck muscle injuries. If Chris had been choked, especially with, as Jessie describes it, a big old stick, there would have been evidence of that and not just abrasions.
Some blood on your clothes?
I had no blood on me. I didn't get close to him.
Were your clothes wet still?
They was damp.
Muddy?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Inspector Gitchell touched on a point. Real close. Now, what clothes was Jason wearing that day, that night?
He was some blue jeans and some boots, like the army boots, like.
Army boots? And what kind of a shirt? I mean, you know, everybody wears a special shirt for different things.
He was wearing a Megadeth shirt.
A Megadeth?
Not Megadeth, Metallica.
Metallica shirt. All right, was he wearing a cap? Anything like that?
No, he didn't wear a cap.
All right, Damien. What was Damien wearing?
Damien had some black pants on, some boots, and a black t-shirt.
All right, was anything on his shirt? No kind of design or
No,
anything?
just black.
These blue jeans that Jason was wearing, they designer jeans? Were they old jeans, wore out, holes?
They wore out.
What did he look like?
They had holes in the knees and stuff.
Holes in the knees. What color is Jason's hair?
Blonde.
Bright blonde or like a sandy reddish type blonde? You know the difference?
It's like a sandy color blonde.
Sandy colored blonde? Okay. He's wearing blue jeans. He had a Metallica shirt. This is a shirt that's got Metallica across the front of it spelled out and a man's name or something under it, or a picture. Is that right? You tell me.
They had pictures.
Picture of somebody?
Different shirts have, different Metallica shirts got different pictures.
Well, which one did he have?
He had the sky skull on and stuff like that.
A skull. Okay. What were you wearing that day?
I was just wearing regular blue jeans, my shoes, and
What kind of shoes were you wearing?
my Adidas.
Adidas tennis shoes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What kind of shirt were you wearing?
I was just wearing a regular, one of my old breezy up t-shirts.
Okay. Was it a design shirt, like this Bull Run type shirt, or was it just a plain white
Plain white.
old t-shirt? Where are these shoes at now?
A friend of mine got them, he borrowed them.
All right. Who is that?
Buddy Lucas,
Buddy Lucas?
he borrowed them from him.
The boots that Damien had on, are they army type boots too, or what kind of boots were they?
It's close to like army type, not quite.
Okay. They're black. Is that right? Lace up? Okay. And Jason's black, lace up?
Jason was black up to about mid-quarter wide.
Oh, they come way up on him. Okay. Damien's didn't come up that far. Okay.
Jessie is describing what everyone was wearing that day. Jessie said he wore Adidas, who he lent to Buddy Lucas. Jason's boots were described correctly, and Damien's boots were also described correctly. Well, almost. Jason's boots were black and laced up, but didn't go up to his knees. And the clothing detail is important, especially if you're trying to secure a search warrant based on this confession. You want to be able to identify correctly the clothes that the suspects were wearing the day of the murders. But why don't Ridge and Gitchell ever ask Jessie to describe what the 3 boys were wearing? Those are important details, too.
Okay. When they killed the boys, you decided to go. You went home. How long after you got home before you received a phone call? 30 minutes? An hour? An hour after you got home? Okay. So they were there for a lot longer.
Mm-hmm.
When he called you on the phone, did he say you just got in?
He called me when he first called me. He said, how come I left? I told him I couldn't stand it. I had to do something else.
Okay.
And then
you couldn't stand it.
And then I heard Damien in the background saying, we done it. What we gonna do now? What about if somebody saw us?
Okay. Did anybody see you leave?
No.
That you know of?
That I know of.
Did anybody see Damien and Jason?
I don't know, I left before them.
But have you heard anybody say that they saw Damien and Jason? You hadn't heard anybody? Okay. Now these initiations, you said they eat part of the leg muscles, leg meat. Would that involve eating part of the penis of the animal? Just the meat?
Just the meat.
Okay. Has Jason and Damien talked to you since this happened? They haven't talked to you about this?
They ain't say nothing around me. Well, not because I'm around some of my friends, they don't say nothing.
Well, when you've been by yourself, and I'm sure in the last 3 weeks you've been by yourself with them sometime.
I mean, with Damien, he keeps on asking me how come I left and stuff. And has anybody said anything to me about it?
Okay. What did he say about when you came to the police department? That boy, you seeing that boy in the woods up there behind the Goodyear place. What did he say about that?
He didn't know nothing about that.
He doesn't know that? Okay. What about when you get with Jason by himself?
He keeps on asking me what we're going to do next. I told him I can't do nothing now because I go work with my dad every day. I'll make a big excuse because...
So they're scared. Is that right?
They're scared because after what they did, I told them I just bring a big excuse. I go work with my dad every time or something. I gotta do something.
Well, what do you think ought to be done to them for killing these boys?
I think they may be put away for a while.
Put away for a while. Do you think they're sick or just mean?
I think they're sick.
They're sick. Okay. Is there anything else you want to add to this statement?
No.
Why did you not come forward with this information?
Because I was scared.
Scared of Damien or scared of the police?
Scared of the police.
Are you scared of Damien now?
No.
Are you scared of the police now?
No.
You're not? So we treated you well. Okay. All right. I'm going to conclude this interview. The time is 3:18.
Now, this clip is full of details that to the casual observer would seem fairly innocuous. When Detective Ridge asks Jessie about coming to the police station, what he's referring to is an incident that occurred May 15, 1993. According to Detective Mike Allen's Criminal Investigation Field Report, this occurred near the railroad tracks behind Goodyear on Missouri. Received a telephone call that there was a white male on the railroad tracks behind the Goodyear on Missouri Street, and that the caller observed 3 kids 8 or 9 years old running from the area across Missouri and believed to be running from the older white male. After units close by responded to the area, a white male was observed by Lieutenant Tony Miller, fitting the description given, walking over the railroad tracks behind Goodyear. The white male was identified as Tracy Stephen Laxton. Patrolman Detective C. Dabbs, Lieutenant Miller, asked Tracy Laxton if he would come to the police department and voluntarily, and he agreed. The 3 juvenile white males that ran were not found but were observed running toward the area of Belvedere by the collar. Detectives Anderson, Blair, and Allen did find 3 white males, number 1 being David Sims, 22 years old, number 2 being Dennis Carter, 15 years old, number 3 being Jessie Misskelley Jr., 17 years old. They were located in the bowling alley at the Holiday Plaza Mall. Upon seeing officers, they came up and stated that they were walking on railroad tracks and had just bought something to drink at. Now, this comment cannot be read to the ink stamp placement. And the 3 white males who were, again, the ink stamp, walking on tracks saw them and started running. Again, the ink stamp. Above described, number 1, number 2, and number 3 stated that as they got up on the tracks behind Goodyear, they observed a white male with reddish blonde hair come out of the woods and started trying to talk to them. He said his name was Tracy and that he was from Mississippi and that his car had broken down at a church in Mississippi. Subjects number 1, 2, and number 3 stated that the guy asked if they wanted to come over to his camp and drink some beer. Number 1, number 2, and number 3 stated they got scared because of the recent murders of the white males and that they ran to the phone in front of Howard's Donuts and called the police, then walked to the bowling alley. See attached subject descriptions on number 1, number 2, and number 3. This incident occurred just 10 days after Jessie, according to this confession, witnessed and or participated in the murders of 3 8-year-old boys. Yet Jessie not only calls the police, but approaches them at the bowling alley and then goes down to the station to give a statement. Detective Ridge asks Jessie if he's been alone with Damien in the last 3 weeks and what Damien has said. Jessie says, basically, Damien just wants to know why Jessie, quote, left and stuff, and, quote, hadn't anybody said anything to me about it. Both Detective Ridge and Inspector Gitchell are well aware of Vicki Hutchison's statement given on May 28, 1993 at this time. They know that when Jessie introduced Damien and Vicki, he had to have spoken to Damien at least once and been alone with him at least once. Yet both of them fail to even address the situation with Jessie. Also, there's this whole Damien meeting Vicki issue. So Jessie, who participated in a triple homicide with Damien, gets Damien to come over to Vicki's house and Damien doesn't bat an eye. Damien just goes over to Vicki's without even questioning why Jessie, his accomplice, has set this meeting up. According to Vicki, the reason she asked Jessie was because she knew him to be a friend of Damien's. Although she claims Jessie is in a cult, participates in orgies, she doesn't suspect Jessie of being part of the murders. Vicki also mentions that after the boys' funerals, which were held on May 11, 1993 for Michael and May 12, 1993 for Chris, she decided to send Aaron away for a few weeks due to newspaper reporters. Although she doesn't mention which funeral it was that Aaron was approached at, Aaron is quoted in the Commercial Appeal in an article about Chris Byers' funeral. So that must be the child she's referring to in her statement. Vicki says that on May 19, 1993, she, Jessie, and Damien went to Terrell, Arkansas to an SBOT where Vicki observed an orgy. Now, not only did Jessie introduce Vicki to Damien, but according to Vicki's June 2, 1993 statement, Jessie and Vicki drove to Jason Baldwin's house in Vicki's truck, picked Damien up, and brought him to Vicki's trailer, quote, about 3 weeks ago, which would have been around the week of May 10, 1993. Vicki goes on to report that as soon as Damien got in the truck, he spoke to Jessie about being questioned by the police. This is why detectives believed Vicki Hutchison. Damien was questioned by police multiple times, and he was accused by the police of committing the murders on May 10, 1993. This is when he was at the station answering questions and failing a polygraph. Well, according to Detective Bill Durham. It's this statement given on June 2, 1993, that causes the West Memphis Police Department to discuss picking up Jessie Misskelley and possibly being a witness on the morning of June 3, 1993. It's at this point that Jessie is placed under arrest. Although there are actually two records of arrest for Jessie Misskelley, both are dated June 3, 1993, 2:45 p.m., which is the time the recorded statement began, although Jessie was not told he was under arrest when he began his statement. The first record of arrest lists 3 counts of capital murder, while the second record lists 1 count of capital murder. The narrative under the first record reads, "This defendant was arrested on the authority of arrest warrant WS 931271 issued by Municipal Court Judge Pal Rainey. He was advised of his Miranda rights and stated he fully understood his rights and gave a verbal taped statement admitting his participation in the above listed charge." The narrative seems to indicate Jessie was in fact under arrest at the time he gave the taped statement. However, when Ridge is explaining his rights to Jessie, he says this.
This is Detective Brian Ridge of the West Memphis Police Department, currently in the West Memphis Police Department, conducting an investigation for the offense of triple homicide, case file number 93050666. Currently in the office with Jessie Lloyd Misskelley Jr., birth date 7/10/75, education as a 9th grade. The place we are in the detective division. Today's date is 6/3/93. The time now is 2:44 p.m. Present in the interview will be Inspector Gary Gitchell and Jessie Misskelley. Jessie, in front of me I have a rights form. It's got your signature at the bottom of it. Is that correct? Your signature?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We're informing you that we are Detective Sergeant Mike Allen and Detective Brian Ridge. Now, Detective Sergeant Mike Allen is the one that read this form to you earlier. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And I was here when he read it to you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Police officers of the West Memphis Police Department. We're conducting an investigation for the offense of capital felony murder, which was committed on or about 5/5/93. Before we ask you any questions, you must know and understand your legal rights. Therefore, we warn and advise you that you have the right to remain silent. Do you understand that?
Yes.
And those are your initials on the line in front of that statement?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Anything you say can be used against you in court. Do you understand that?
Yes, I do.
And those are your initials.
Yes, it is.
You have the right to talk to a lawyer for advice before we ask you any questions and to have him with you during questioning. You understand that?
Yes, I do.
And those are your initials.
Yes, it is.
If you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be appointed for you before any questioning if you wish, at no cost to you. You understand that?
Yes, I do.
And those are your initials.
Yes, it is.
If you decide to answer questions now without a lawyer present, you will still have the right to stop answering at any time. You understand that?
Yes, I do.
Those are your initials.
Yes, it is.
You're up here of your own free will. You
Right.
came up here to answer some questions, and basically we found out some information during those questions. Is that correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay. At the bottom of this form is a waiver of rights. It says, I have read this statement of my rights, and I understand what my rights are. I am willing to make a statement and answer questions. I do not want a lawyer at this time. I understand and know what I am doing. No promises or threats have been made to me, and no pressure or force has been used against me. Is all that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And you signed the bottom of the form.
Yes, I do.
Okay. It's witnessed by Michael Wayne Allen and myself, Detective Brian Ridge. Okay. Jessie.
Tricky, tricky, Detective Ridge. The narrative under the second record of arrest reads, this defendant was arrested on the authority of Arrest Warrant WS-931271, issued by Municipal Court Judge Pal Rainey. He was given his rights and signed a rights form, but made no statement about the charge, which is now 1 count of capital murder. Why did the count change? I suspect this is why.
Attorney, tape recorder is taping. The time is 9:06 p.m.
This is William P. Rainey, municipal judge for West Memphis and Frederick County. I had just sworn Detective Ridge and Detective Gitchell in. I have just read a transcript of what is purported to be a statement made by Jessie Misskelley on 6/3/93. I have completed the statement, and I had a question concerning what appeared to me to be some obvious discrepancies in time based upon information provided to me tonight concerning the investigation. I have questioned Officer Gitchell about this, and he is at this time about to explain to me the discrepancies concerning Mr. Misskelley's initial statement that he was in the woods by Blue Beacon at noon on the day that the children were killed, which was May 5th, 1993, and that the children had skipped school and were actually in the woods initially at 12 noon. Now, Officer Gitchell, you've heard my statement. At this time, I would like you to clarify for me the discrepancy that I have pointed out in this initial statement that was taken.
Yes, sir. I believe Mr. Misskelley did get confused in regards to timing. What we were talking about and wanting questions answered was the time in which himself and Jason Baldwin and Michael Eccles arrived in the woods.
Now, you say Michael Eccles, is that the same as Damian Wayne Eccles?
Yes, sir. He also goes by a name of Damian.
Okay,
Eccles.
go ahead.
The time that he straightened up for us was that he arrived, and that's Misskelley, arrived at 6 p.m. in the wooded area known as Robin Hood Hills, along with Damian Eccles and Jason Baldwin. And then further stated that the victims, being the Byers Boy, Branch, and Moore, arrived approximately at 7 p.m. into the wooded area. And that's the contact at which time all parties made.
All right. Now, Officer Ridge, let's see, hand me you signed the affidavit on yours yet? Okay.
The affidavit
Okay.
for warrant of arrest.
Yes, where is, okay.
Here's the affidavit for warrant of arrest.
Let me say, okay. All right, Officer Reed, you've already been sworn that your signature constitutes your statement under oath, District Number 3. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I have read the 3 affidavits for warrant of arrest, one for Jessie Lloyd Misskelley Jr., one for Charles Jason Baldwin, and one for Damian Wayne Eccles, and I am executing all 3 affidavits, and I am initialing each page of Exhibit A with my initials and date. Executing and attaching to the affidavit warrant for arrest for the corresponding parties. Now I need to read the affidavits for the search warrant, and at this time, I'm sure that's going to take a little while. Let's turn the tape off and we'll come back on after I've had a chance to see it.
The time is 9:14.
So the first attempt to get warrants for Damian and Jason was unsuccessful due to the judge noting the discrepancies of the time stated by Jessie versus the known facts of the case, which is what caused Inspector Gitchell to go back and record another statement from Jessie, commonly referred to as the clarification statement. Now, if you read the time log of events, there's a notation that at 3:46 p.m., Inspector Gitchell conducted a second interview with Jessie Misskelley to clear up some discrepancies concerning time and events in the first interview. This is marked through and incorrect is written. Given the fact that the amount of time that Jessie was questioned came under such scrutiny, these details are important.
Okay. That Coke was kind of cold, huh? I tell you, it tasted pretty good to me, though. Jessie.
As you can hear, Detective Gitchell gives Jessie a Coke to drink. If you read the time log, this likely occurred between 5:05 p.m. and 6:15 p.m. The reason I believe this is because 5:05 p.m. is underlined and Jessie was offered food, which he declined, at 3:22 p.m., but was given 2 cigarettes. Since in the audio I can't hear Jessie lighting or smoking a cigarette, the 3:22 p.m. makes no sense. The total time Jessie was at the West Memphis Police Department was from 9 a.m. to 9:14 p.m., which is roughly 11 hours. The total time he was questioned was roughly 5 hours, from 10 a.m. to 3:18 p.m., with an approximately 2-hour break, and then the final statement took roughly 12 minutes. Now it's time for detectives to begin making their case against Jessie. I will discuss this in the next episode. As always, thank you for watching.